thank you for coming to the Stop Food Waste at Home workshop. And we just started recording, so just wanted to have you keep that in mind. We will be sending this out to everybody as soon as we get it edited, so that you don't have a lot of the precursor stuff and waiting around, and also like some of the end stuff, so you just have the presentation. So that will be available. And then Carrie Thornton is our speaker today. She is from Tilth Alliance. She's involved with community education. Excuse me. And it sounds very fascinating, everything she's going to talk about. I'm very excited about this. And she also has some resources that she can share out as well. So we could email those to everybody along with a link to the recording. I think that Carrie could probably also paste them into our chat. So that would be great for you to be able to access it that way as well. There it is. All right, so about our workshops, we have several workshops that are coming up, and at the end of this presentation, I'll let everyone know kind of like save the date type things for events that are coming up. You can always sign up to get our e-newsletter. We send an e-newsletter about once a month that just highlights our events that are coming up, and anything involved with stormwater or recycling or garbage or waste reduction. You can scan a QR code that's on the screen and sign up, or you can go to the website that's listed, the /e-newsletter. You can also visit our Facebook page and look at events that are coming up, or go to Instagram, our Instagram page too. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, but I'm going to launch a poll just to get everybody kind of engaged with what's going on all around, revolved around food. So, favorite meal of the day. Oh, I do like the other. I'm not going to try to sway anyone, but other's kind of intriguing.
Midnight snack, maybe. Favorite meal.
Oh, it's all spread out. Awesome. Good. Spread out. Awesome. All right, Carrie, want to start sharing your screen? And just to let everyone know, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can ask it in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can, either raise your hand with a little, the little image that you can like raise your hand electronically, or actually raise your hand and like put your video on. Perfectly fine. This is going to be a little more informal, so we can also like share tips back and forth and ask questions as the presentation goes on.
Mm-hmm. And if you have any tech issues during it, message me and I will help. That's Gemma.
Should I go? Hi. Hi, my name is Carrie, and I work for an organization called Tilth Alliance. And it seems like we have a small group today. So if you feel comfortable turning on your camera and joining with your voice, I would love to feel like we have all the folks in the room. Thank you so much for coming to this class. I know it's a beautiful day outside, and so I really appreciate y'all being here. The work that I do is I call it community education, but really mostly what I do is I teach people how to garden, and I teach adult classes through Tilth Alliance, the organization. I teach online and in person, and I teach a lot about growing food. I teach a lot about food preservation. I do like to talk a lot about food waste prevention, and so this presentation that I'm going to do is preventing food waste kind of really through a lens of trying to just as a gardener, kind of connecting to food and really bringing value back to what food is. And so thank you for being here. I'm going to put in the chat, this is a link to a Google slide presentation, which is the presentation that I'm going to start sharing. And I would love to, I know that it's a small group here, but I wonder if anybody in the group that's here, how are y'all doing today? Does anybody want to like throw me a thumbs up or send me a note in the chat? All right, thanks, sweet. I got a couple of thumbs up. Doing good, just got back from the beach. Awesome, excellent, thank you. Thanks for being here with me. So the link that I put in the chat is for this slideshow. And the reason that I am sending you that is because in lieu of having like a resource sheet, I just embedded some links into this slideshow. So as we go through, we'll be able to, there's some hot links in there. So you can have this later. And if you want to check out those links later, you can just do it through the slideshow. So thank you to the City of Federal Way for inviting me to talk about kind of stopping food waste at home. I found this image on the internet, which is all sort of like the ugly food or the weird food. And one of the things that I just recently watched this documentary called Just Eat It, and they talk about food waste. And one of the kind of running themes in that documentary is like how we as consumers choose our produce, like you know, when there's a big stack of tomatoes and we always are looking for like the prettiest tomato, the freshest looking tomato. And then and those decisions lead the markets to really value just one kind of tomato or one shape of tomato. And so all of the blemished ones and the weird ones, they all end up having a really hard time finding a market for. So this image just kind of reminds me like, oh, sometimes when we go to the grocery store, maybe we change our perspective and value some of the interesting looking fruits. And when we're choosing our tomato, you know, choosing the strange looking one and just like sending that message back to the folks that purchase for those grocery stores that like, oh, we do like interesting looking tomatoes. We do like sometimes our carrots to have two legs and just instead of just one leg. Anyways, so what's the big deal about food waste? Why are we talking about this? I think in the last few years or so, maybe 5 or 6 years, I've noticed a lot of folks talking about food waste prevention. And really because of the way across the globe, but really in our country, I think in America, 40% of all of the food that is grown or or produced in our country is wasted. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of resources that go into making food that's never going to be eaten. And there are definitely at all parts of the food system, at all levels of the supply chain, from the farmers to manufacturers to grocers, there's waste that happens in all of those areas, but our household food waste really amounts to more than we think. And so when we purchase food at the grocery store, we bring home food from the market, really finding ways to, to use that food that we spent money on. I think that I also saw a statistic that like 25% of like average across the US, 25% of the food that we buy gets thrown in the garbage. And so if you're buying like if you just imagine yourself walking like from the grocery store out into the parking lot carrying 4 bags of groceries, it's sort of like you just dropped one and kept walking. An average family of 4 in the United States wastes around $1,500 worth of food a year. That's like over $100 a month. And that's not everybody, but it's an average. So some folks are wasting a lot and some folks are wasting probably less than that. But it's really interesting to kind of do an audit of your household and think like really, how much how much food that could be eaten ends up going to waste because we forgot about it, or because we cooked a really big meal and then only could handle 2 days of leftovers instead of 4 days of leftovers. And so the rest of it just ended up getting thrown out or wasted. And so I think it's really helpful to kind of, for me, to think about, to really remember that like food is precious in our like modern American culture. I think we have this sort of general feeling of abundance, that food is everywhere, that it can be cheap, that that like, you know, a head of lettuce should only cost 69 cents as opposed to $5, you know. And so many people feel like they have access to lots and lots of abundant, cheap food. And because sometimes the food in our culture, in our country, gets subsidized, it actually ends up feeling a lot cheaper than it actually is to create. And so for me, just remembering that like food comes from real things. It comes from live creatures. It comes from plants or animals or mushrooms or algae. Like the food that we eat, even if it doesn't seem like it used to be a plant at one point, like Cheerios or Cocoa Puffs, like doesn't really seem like it is came from a plant, but food comes from plants and animals. They're live creatures that require resources like energy and water and human labor and money to grow, harvest, process, ship, store, cook, all of those things. And so just remembering that there's so much resource and life embedded in each, you know, kind of piece of food or product of food that we bring into our homes. And also, you know, not everybody feels that abundance. In our state in Washington, roughly 1 in 10 Washingtonians are consistently struggle with hunger or food scarcity. And that eating food is a human basic need. It's like we all have to do it. Sometimes we have to do it multiple times a day. Preparing and cooking our own food sometimes can feel like drudgery. But really, in essence, like growing food, cooking food, sharing food with each other, with our families, with our friends, with our neighbors, with our coworkers, like that really is what creates culture. It's a huge part of who we are as people. In a lot of traditional cultures, in a lot of traditional you know, cuisines, that food is really important to that cultural connectivity. So just for me, remembering that is a huge part for me of that, remembering that sort of gratitude of what I'm eating before a meal or even before a snack. Like what I'm eating really is life that should be valued, and to remember all of the things that go into making that meal or making that food. And so I just wanted to kind of start off with that framework with this food waste prevention, because that really is the big call for me. And I know that a lot of in past generations, I don't see it as much, but when families have meals together, in a lot of cultures, there's a you know, a saying of grace, or at least some kind of gratitude that opens the meal. In Japanese culture, we say itadakimasu, which means it's just like one moment of gratitude, like thank you to like all of the things that went into making this food. So thank you for bearing with me, but just a reminder that food is precious. So we talk about preventing food waste, like what can we do? And some of the things that, you know, I do in my, you know, in my kitchen, like some of my examples, they can be really big ideas, big things, like trying to do regular meal planning. So thinking into the week and like writing down, like, this is what we're going to have for dinner on Monday. This is what we're going to have for dinner on Tuesday, and thinking into the future. I try to be better at that. It's not always easy for me, but trying to be better at it is a goal for me. A big thing is like growing a garden. A big thing is like, you know, practicing my cooking skills and using flexible recipes so that I can use whatever I have in hand. There are some smaller things like changing out, you know, I like to use like recycled yogurt containers to put my leftovers in. But if you use a clear container, like a clear plastic or glass Pyrex dishes, then you can actually see what's in the leftovers. And that's just a small thing, but it really makes a big difference. Another small thing is like, I've stopped peeling my carrots. It feels like, you know, if I'm growing the carrots, sometimes they get ugly and gnarly and dirt gets clogged in there. But if you're buying grocery store carrots, they come to you like spray washed and completely clean. And the skins are so thin that you barely even notice them. And so those just a couple of things. And I wonder if I can pause and maybe even see if I pop out of my screen share, does anybody have like a prevention tip that they want to share? Either in the chat or with your voice, something that you do at home that you use, that a tip or an action that you do to prevent food waste at home.
Yeah, I can share. One of the things that we do in our household is that not everyone, and this is kind of like, seems backwards, but sometimes we purchase those smaller boxes of cereal because in our family, hardly anyone eats cereal. And if we buy a big family size, like a Raisin Bran or something like that, it definitely will go bad before we're going to finish it. It just will, because we won't eat it all. And so now I've recognized this with my family, that there's certain foods we will not eat in, and it's like that kind of internal thing, like I don't want to buy the small boxes, but to prevent food waste, sometimes you have to buy smaller packages of stuff just because otherwise you are going to throw it away. And it seems like it's a good deal. Don't fall for the deal. Because I've done that before with mayonnaise. I went to the store and there was like we needed mayonnaise. We hardly ever eat mayonnaise except for tuna fish sandwiches. And I needed mayonnaise, and there was like I don't know, this size jar. And for double the amount of mayonnaise, it was 10 cents more. And I was like, what a deal. For 10 cents more, I can get twice the mayonnaise. But I was like, wait a minute, we don't even like mayonnaise. And it really killed me not to purchase that because it was such a good deal. But I like fought against it. So I didn't waste mayonnaise.
Yeah. That's a big one for me. It's like sort of counterintuitive, but I realize that there are some things that also my family is small and they don't eat a lot of food. And so trying to like, you know, get like the big thing and you end up wasting a lot of it too. Yeah, it's actually not a better deal if you don't end up using it all. I see folks saying, make what you're going to eat and you try not to make a lot of leftovers. Yeah, that's a great one. And I've noticed even like making a batch of cookies, like a batch of cookies makes a lot of freaking cookies. So I'll always just, no matter what, half the batch of cookies before I bake it. And then if it still is a lot, then I will take half of those cookies and bring them to work, or give half of those cookies to the neighbor kids when they come over, because I know that we're not going to go through them all. Yeah. Freezing and dehydrating foods. Also learning to vacuum seal. Excellent. Cool. Yeah. A little bit of food preservation. And then start with whole grains and beans. They keep for years and you can make what you need for a few days at a time. Yeah. Yeah. So if something is dry and shelf stable, you can store it for a long time. That's a great hint. If you're going to make something with leftovers, something that you can freeze. Yeah, absolutely. And even freezing in smaller quantities, like if you make a big soup and then, freeze in like in single size servings, because then you can just like take it for lunch one day, pop it in the microwave, getting small thermoses and put leftover dinner and kids' lunch next day. Yeah, those are great ideas. Thank you, folks, for sharing your tips. I'm going to go back into my screen here. One of the things I learned about is sort of better understanding this idea of like those dates that they put on foods, the use by date and the sell by date, and that those can be confusing and misleading. The sell by date, like here on this milk, the sell by date says April 4th, and that's for the store. That's for the store to know. It doesn't mean that on April 4th, your milk is bad. What it means is that they shouldn't sell it anymore, because they're giving, the consumer, if you were to purchase it on April 4th, then you have like a week or so to drink that milk. and it's still going to be good. And even the use by dates, or sometimes it's like the best by dates, is really an indicator of quality. And not necessarily about safety. So the quality of something like a salsa, a refrigerated salsa, it might have a best by date, but like 3 days after that salsa, it might still taste good. And that we in this culture tend to be very nervous about trusting our own senses and our sense of taste and our sense of smell to know whether food is bad or not. But like, you can eat the salsa until it doesn't taste good anymore, until you see mold or until it starts to get fizzy. I mean, you could even still eat it after it's fizzy if you're into it, but it doesn't necessarily. Sometimes Trader Joe's food go bad before the expiration date. That's interesting to know. But it's good, a little bit of feedback there about like how your body and you're using your senses, your sight and your smell and your taste to know when food is good and food is bad. And if it's going bad before, you should take that back to the market and give them some feedback about that too. I think a little bit of planning. So some folks are mentioning meal planning, and meal planning can mean a lot of things. It can mean literally like writing out for the next week what all your meals are going to be. And sometimes that can, everyone's got their own their family has their own, personality and what works for them. But sometimes that can be really stressful, and sometimes it can actually alleviate a lot of stress. Because you don't have to worry about, it's like 5:30 and you're like, oh no, what's for dinner? I got to cook something fast. If you already have that, you do a little bit of planning ahead of time. And then by the time, it's 5:30, dinner might already be prepared because you thought about it earlier. So that can be really helpful. And keeping shopping lists can be also really helpful for folks, but everybody does it in their own way. You can even, there's like apps that you can do where you can take pictures of your refrigerator and it'll like keep everything like online in an app for you. I'm not really sure how to do that. We just use a piece of paper and then everyone just adds to the piece of paper. And then when I go to the store, I bring the piece of paper with me. That's a very low tech version of it. But one thing to do is, the running shopping list that we keep in my family, sometimes it's good to, before you just pick that up and take it to the market, look through your refrigerator, look through your pantry and see what you're low on, see what see what you could maybe use instead. So like we're low on rice, but like, oh, there's all this like farro that I bought that I never used. So maybe instead of cooking rice with dinner, I'm going to try to make this farro instead. So think about what you have on hand and if you can swap anything out, and really being realistic about what works for your family. I put this image here in the slideshow. It's a very Pinterest version of like, managing your pantry and making your menu and drawing out your grocery list. And this doesn't look realistic to me at all. But it's sort of an interesting thing, way to talk about, different ways that people organize their pantry. I think just the idea of just kind of planning ahead before you go to the grocery store, look at what you have and make a plan. I also, another thing that I think really is important for me in my quest to reduce my food waste is, in this kind of falls in line with that food is precious feeling also, is that like I try, I'm on this journey to try to like make food joyful again. I think cooking dinner can sometimes be very stressful if you have to do it every night. But if you're going to embark on a journey of meal planning, like encourage your family to help you decide what's for dinner. If they get to choose, what one meal a week, or if they get to choose what the side dishes are going to be, they're probably going to be more likely to eat it. And if everyone sits down at the table and like has a family meeting and comes up with a plan, I think that actually can be really fun and a way to have conversations with low stress. Like if you're actually at eating dinner and you're like, why are you eating that? Or I thought you liked that. And there can be a lot of pressure, but if you're doing it not at mealtime and just having a conversation about it together, I can feel like it can be a little bit more fun. I think cooking more with your kids, cooking more with your family, cooking more with your parents, with your aunts and uncles, with your neighbors, with your friends, I think cooking for me becomes much more joyful when I'm doing it with others, and it feels less like drudgery. And I think when cooking and food preparation feels like a celebration, it's more fun to eat that food as well. And I guess just a thing about like family meals, there's been a lot of studies about how valuable family, especially family dinner meal times can be. And they can actually lead to like better family relationships, healthier food choices in the long run, especially for the littles, less stress in our life, and kind of lead to overall happiness. And there's actually like studies that are proving this. And also sharing food with your neighbor, even if, like I said, like making a half a batch of cookies is still a lot of cookies. And I'll instead of waiting like the 3 days until the cookies are almost stale and then panicking, be like, what do I do with all these cookies? Like, I just know that when I make the cookies, like half of them are going to come with me to work. Or if I made, I had like a birthday cake, and like we can't eat the whole birthday cake, like I'm going to bring half of it with me to work. Or share with a neighbor. If you have like an elderly neighbor, bring, if you end up like the pot of soup that you made ended up being too big, bring them some supper. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. I think it's a really nice way to bring people together, and then it feels less stressful for you because you made too much food. And even if it's a neighbor you hadn't met before, sometimes that can be nice. So tips while you're at the grocery store. I think Colleen said one of these, which is like larger containers, one at the bottom, larger containers are not always a better deal, especially if you don't use it all. Some of the grocery stores, like I know Fred Meyer and like some of the like PCC, like co-ops have like bulk bins where you can buy just the amount that you need. I think this is really nice for a lot of dry goods, oatmeal, every small amounts of things. If you're trying a new recipe, like the farro, or like, I'm trying this new recipe, but I don't want to buy a whole box. I just want like half a cup because that's what my recipe calls for. Or spices. Spices are way less expensive if you buy them in bulk, if you have the opportunity to buy bulk spices or to buy from the bulk bin. So you can just take out the amount that you need, just like a tablespoon or something, and just purchase that. And you're going to save a lot of money, and then you don't have to worry about it like being wasted, because like ground spices lose their flavor, really quick, can lose their flavor really quickly. This idea about making a plan before you go to the store. Sometimes we go to the grocery store on the way home from work. And so by that time you're like, I don't remember, like, what did I say I was going to do? What do we have? Do we have this? But if you can make a plan and take it with you before you go to work, just have that thought ahead of time before you go into the grocery store. And we all have heard the saying, like, don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry. That's a real thing. If you like have a snack or even eat a small meal before you go to the grocery store, and not do it when you're stressed out, like it can be a much more joyful and less stressful experience. And also you won't just buy random things. One thing that I do is what helps me stick to my shopping list is that I'll write on my shopping list like 1 treat or 2 kinds of protein, so that I have flexibility in my list, but it encourages me to keep to my list. Anyways, so, really it's just kind of about like being conscious about like what works for you and what works for your family. And I do this thing where like, I like to try new recipe, and then like, I bought this bottle of like oyster sauce, or I bought this bottle of Worcestershire sauce, or I bought this like weird shaped pasta because I want to try this recipe, or I wanted to like try it, but like have a recipe in mind so that you can use it, instead of just like, sometimes at the grocery store, we think that we're like, oh, maybe I'm the kind of person that wants to eat bean sprouts, or maybe I'm the kind of person that wants to eat fennel, but that's realistically, eating fennel is not part of my regular pattern. And so have to like make sure that I have a plan for that fennel before I buy it, or else it's not really going to be part, end up being a meal. It's just going to end up in the back of the fridge. I don't know if that's resonating with you, but that's a big thing that when I'm at the grocery store, I'm like, maybe I'm the kind of person, maybe we'll eat fennel. Maybe we'll eat raisins. I don't know. Anyway. some tips for storing food once you get home. When you bring your groceries home, and I think too, some of this is like creating intentional patterns or creating rituals of like when you bring groceries home, sometimes like, especially if it's like, I just got home, I went to the store on my way home from work, or I went to the store on the way home from picking up the kids, and then we had to do this crazy grocery store thing, and now I'm like really stressed out, and I just want to like drop the groceries and like go eat a snack, or drop the groceries and go take a nap or whatever. But like take a moment to like unpack what you got. Take a moment to put the things away in the right place. Like if you bought, carrots with the tops on, like take the tops off and store them separately. If you bought beets with the tops on, take the tops off and store them separately. If you have herbs, you can cut the bottoms off and store them in a glass of water. Just being, if you buy the herbs or the greens that are like twisted up together, like untie that and put it in a bag when you put it into the fridge, and it'll last longer when you kind of like open it up. If you are interested in learning more about like how to store food, especially fresh foods, really well, there's a link here, and if you click on it, it brings you, let's see what this does. I think it's going to tell me to download something. Aha. So it's this food storage guide, this is from the Seattle Love Food Stop Waste program, but King County Food Waste has a storage guide too. I happen to like this one better because it actually shows you like a picture of your kitchen. Like this is what goes in the pantry. This is what you keep outside of the refrigerator. Store your onions separately from your potatoes. What goes in the crisper drawer. That sort of thing. There's some words here you can read about packaging and what food date labels mean. And then, what's going to go in the low humidity, high humidity, those types of things. So I find that to be really helpful. Let's see. Did I get everything? Oh, there's this cool thing that you can do. I find that also trying to like declutter the fridge and freezer and pantry, like go through it every once in a while and like, give away things that you don't want to eat, get rid of things that have gone past their date, or that have been around for too long, and then bring the things that need to be eaten soon up towards the front. Or you can even create a little box and put a label on it that says eat soon. So if somebody opens a fridge and they're like, what's to eat? They can go straight to this box and be like, oh, the cucumber, I can eat that. Or, oh, this apple's going to go bad. Let's get that one first. And I think that can be really helpful. Decluttering can really help you keep track of what you have. And then as you're doing that decluttering process, like write up, what are the things that need to get used up? I bought this thing a long time ago, and so I really got to figure it out, so I don't have to throw it away. I've got, let's see, eating seasonally. I think this is another one that feels maybe a little like not anti-intuitive, but that thing where like sometimes buying from like local produce from farmers markets or the co-op can seem more expensive, but actually because the food is fresher and it wasn't stored as long or shipped as far, it can actually last you a lot longer, especially when it's, we're talking about like fresh fruits and vegetables, produce. Buying something from a farmer's market can last like twice as long as something you buy from the grocery store, especially if it's something, like a big box store like Costco, or where they're like, it's harvested in one place and then shipped to another and then packaged in another and sent back to a thing. And anyways, buying locally also supports local economies and encourages a much less wasteful food system altogether, because it's encouraging smaller kind of economic ecosystems. And so this link, if you click on this link, it goes to Eat Local First, which is an online platform that helps you find ways to purchase local foods that are grown or produced locally. And so either through farmers markets or co-ops or like online purchasing, there's a lot of, and I think it's statewide. So that's a good link for you to take a look at when you have some time. And also sort of counterintuitively, sometimes we think that like canned food or frozen food is not of best quality, but if you're eating produce out of season, things like strawberries, peas, green beans, when they're picked at the peak of ripeness in the right season, and then they're like frozen right on site, they're actually going to capture a lot more nutrients and have a lot better quality of that produce. Sometimes in frozen, especially, and sometimes even in canned, depending on, it's going to change the texture a little bit. So that's something to account for. But frozen pea, like honestly, frozen peas are always going to be of better quality than any sort of like fresh pea that you can buy, unless you grow them in your garden or get them immediately from the farmer's market. And it's good to have some flexible recipes in your back pocket. So these are recipes like frittatas or, soup or, pasta salad, things that you can just use up all the like little, it doesn't matter if you put a carrot in it versus a sweet potato or, or even like broccoli, like whatever can go in that pasta or in that casserole. And this, if you click onto this link, it'll bring you to the King County food waste prevention website. Can I click on it? Yeah. They have this, they've got a lot of interesting information on this website too, but they've got this called Recipe Box, and there's 2 really cute videos that you can watch about family recipes. And then there's all of these different, these are just some of recipes that you can find that are meant for either specifically using up leftovers, like making bread pudding, or a flexible recipe like a frittata or a tortilla soup, where you can add kind of whatever you have left over in there. So there's lots of good resources for stuff like that out there too. And then for me, I always like to put a plug in for growing a garden. I think if you're able to grow even a small garden, even in a container, herbs and salad greens are easy to grow. And they're the things that are often the most wasted, because they're, you buy a pack of rosemary, you're only going to use a little. And then what do you do with the rest? Well, you can leave it in a basket, let it dry out, and then you have dried rosemary. But also if you have a rosemary bush, on the side of your yard, you never have to buy a packet of rosemary again. And the same thing with salad greens or leafy greens. They tend to grow really well here in our climate. You can, plant them often and harvest them often. And you don't have to worry about ever throwing away greens because they're so perishable. And also, I think tending even a small garden can make you feel more connected to your food source. I think for me, that connection to like really seeing what it takes to grow a head of lettuce, or seeing what it takes to grow a head of cabbage or a tomato or whatever, like acknowledging that effort and that time and that investment really makes me appreciate like buying lettuce from the grocery store. Like, when I plant lettuce, those like 5 lettuce heads that I grew are like so valuable to me, like way more than like the $3 that I would pay at the co-op, or way more than the $3 or $4 that I would pay at the farmer's market for that head of lettuce, because of all the like time and effort that I went into it. And so I think that helps to like, that lettuce that I grew, like I'm not going to waste that. I'm not going to throw that out. I'm going to make sure that I eat it. And then also with whatever food waste does come out of your kitchen, we lucky in King County, like have municipal yard waste pickup, and that goes to a commercial composting facility and gets made into compost. Not everybody in the country and the world has access to that. That's a really great thing that we have. But also, if you keep it on site, if you are a gardener, make some compost at home. And there's some really simple ways to do food waste composting at home. This link goes to a food digester plans, which is literally a trash can with holes drilled in the bottom of it that you bury in the ground. And also, if you wanted to make a worm bin, or if you want to learn about bokashi systems, if you want to learn more about gardening, you can check out Tilth Alliance, which is an organization that I work for, and also the Garden Hotline. if you are a gardener and you don't know about the Garden Hotline is a really great resource for, they can answer all of your garden questions specifically with an organic focus. You can call or email them. This is, their website has a lot of really great resources like brochures with information. They also do monthly Zoom meetings where you can just like log on and ask them all your questions. But I just want to put in a plug for the Garden Hotline if you're a gardener. And then my last bit just is learning a little bit of food preservation. And food preservation doesn't have to be like, jarring up like 3 cases of like tomatoes. It can just be freezing the little bit, like if you buy a bag of green beans and you know you're only going to get through half of it, cut the rest into small pieces, blanch it really quickly, pack it into the freezer, and then you'll have that when you need it and it won't go to waste. If you got some fruit, I've got some strawberries we got from the farmer's market yesterday, and they're like dead ripe strawberries. They're already starting to get soft, and so just like wash them, cut them into slices, sprinkle a little sugar over the top. That'll hold them for a little bit longer, and then you can just put it in a pan, cook it down a little bit, make it into jam or syrup. And adding sugar, adding salt, adding vinegar to something is always going to make it last a little longer. So you don't have to can it, but you can make a little batch of jam. You can put it in the fridge, you can put it in the freezer, or you can make a quick pickle. Let's see, do I have time? A quick pickle. This is image here is just like a relish or like a chow chow, where you chop up all your kind of garden veggies at the end of the season and you make it into a relish, and then you can a big batch of it. But you can also just do like a really quick fridge pickle. And I'm going to do a quick demonstration to make a refrigerator pickle. That's a very simple recipe, just from the random stuff that I found in my refrigerator. So I thought that would be fun to do. One last thing before I click to this, this is the recipe. And it's sort of written more like a method than a real recipe. It's sort of like, get a jar, find some vegetables. You can add fresh herbs. You can add dry spices. If you like, add salt. If you like to add sugar, we're going to put some vinegar in it. And you'll have this recipe / method there for you if you wanted to try this later. And then, also, if you're interested in learning more about canning specifically, the National Center for Home Food Preservation is a great resource that they host, like the USDA guidelines for safe canning. So there's a lot of recipes there for water bath canning, pressure canning, but then also information there on best practices for freezing and drying for food preservation. So that's a good site to know. There's lots of blogs out there for food preservation. There's tons of blogs out there for flexible recipes. There's tons of blogs out there for food waste prevention is like a really hip topic right now. So there's a lot of Instagram and TikTok hacks. Instagram and TikTok like accounts or feeds that have like kitchen hacks for how to, I didn't mean to call them hacks, but kitchen, tips and tricks for just kind of saving up some of these things and making sure like that stale bread doesn't go to waste or whatever. I do have some extra resources here. I wanted to, so the King County's Food Too Good to Waste program is a really great resource. They have that recipe box I showed you. Savethefood.com is a national campaign against food waste. And they've got like a really nice looking website here, and they've got a lot of information. They've got a lot of fun activities. If you want to do like practice some meal planning, if you want to try some new recipes, if you want to learn some facts about food waste, you can find a lot there. So there's a lot of things to look at there. This documentary that I watched called Just Eat It, it's so good, you guys. The King County Library System has it streaming on Hoopla, I think. So if you have a library account, and have done this before, you can stream I think you can also borrow it on DVD from the library, but you can stream it through Hoopla. It's so good. Let's see. There's tons of books in the last like 5 or 10 years. A lot of books have been written about these ideas of like using up all of the vegetables, and this book, Scraps, Peels, and Stems, is written by Jill Leitner, who's a local author and cook and recipe developer. She's done a lot of stuff with like PCC markets, and if this is the King County Library page, and you can look down here, and there's all these other books. There's tons and tons of books that just that folks are like really kind of getting into this, like remembering that food is precious and that we don't want to waste it. I want to show you this food waste prevention guide, which Tilth Alliance, the organization that I work for, put together. It's really lovely. It comes in 9 languages, so you can get it in Amharic, Arabic, Chinese, simplified Chinese, Somali, Vietnamese, Tigrinya, Tagalog, Spanish, and English. And if you click on that, it's this really beautiful 20-page document. My coworker Daniela put it together, and there's a lot of really good tips in here, tips for storing in the fridge. There's an introduction here which talks about why, but tips for storage in the fridge, tips for storage in the pantry, just better storing things, and then a lot of seasonal recipes. So she makes a case for like, why are we eating seasonally? And then what are the produce that we're going to see in spring? And what are some flexible recipes that go with that? So let's make some homemade dressing. We can eat on anything. You know, here's a basic outline for a green smoothie. Some wild greens, frittatas, making pesto. You can make pesto with anything. Anyways, so this is a really awesome document, and I really want to share this with you. You can download it. You can print it out if you want. It's beautiful. I think she put it in Canva. Anyways, and the last thing I just want to plug is there are a lot of blogs out there that focus on food waste prevention. There's this lady named June who works for she works for Delish, which I think is a magazine, but they also have a YouTube channel. And this is their long form YouTube videos are like an hour and a half, and you're like, I'm not gonna watch an hour and a half video, but like you get engrossed in, and all of a sudden 45 minutes have gone by and you're like, what? But like she goes through the process of making, like there's this one where she just cooked just the food that was in her pantry and ended up making like 20 meals over the course of, like a week for her and her partner. So if you like learning about flexible recipe, the way that she cooks is really cool, because she just uses what she has and just kind of makes stuff up or finds a recipe and adjusts it. So it's really interesting to learn about cooking from June. And she's a very she's very charming. And so they're very easy to watch videos. Okay. So I think I'm going to pop out of my screen share and just, how is everyone still there? How are we doing? Are there questions or thoughts or, did any of that resonate with you? Did it seem like things you already do or anything new pop up? No. Okay. Thank you, Erin. Oh, excellent. So some of it is helpful. That sounds so great. I have a few more minutes, and I think what I want to try to do is, are y'all interested in seeing me make a jar of pickles? Yes. Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to, excellent. Thank you for being on board. I'm going to switch to a camera that is, let's see. It's a little weird to look at because it's just an overhead shot, sorry, of this. How's that looking? Just clear out of the way, sorry. And so what I have here is, let's see, I've got a jar, and my recipe is it's a cold it's a cold pickle. I don't heat up the brine or anything. I take this jar. It's based on the way that my grandmother made pickled onions. So I have this is stuff from my refrigerator. This is like the broccoli. I cut the top of the broccoli and used half of it. And now I have the stem. So I've got like the little and broken carrots at the bottom of the bag. There's like the leaves from the broccoli, and I have these two garlic scapes from the garden, and I have this like not even quite half of an onion, and I'm just gonna make it all into a pickle. So I'm gonna peel the skin off of this, and if you haven't done this before, things like onions, onion skins, garlic peels, like kind of the tops and tails, and sometimes the peels of the carrot. You can take this stuff and you can put it in like a container, a Ziploc bag, or like a Tupperware, and put it in your freezer and just store it up until you have enough to like make it into stock. So all of that garlic peels, onion peels, I kind of just store it in my freezer. I tend to not put anything cabbagey in the stock, but so I'm not peeling my carrot. I'm just cutting the tops and tails to make them cute. That's going to go in my stock. I'm going to cut these into sticks. So because this pickle is not heated up in any way, the texture is going to stay crunchy. So I like to put a lot of onions in my pickle because this is my grandmother's pickled onion recipe. So it's okay that there's going to be lots of onions. I like to eat pickled onions. And some carrots. And I also, to kind of stand them up like this, maybe. So I also have this broccoli. I'm going to cut maybe the very end of that off. And you guys know that you can eat broccoli stems, right? If you've ever bought kohlrabi, it's basically a glorified broccoli stem, but you have to peel off the skin because the skin is kind of tough. Oops. So I'm just going to take too much of it off, but I get that rough stuff. Okay. And then we're going to cut it into sticks to match the size and shape of my carrots. Just like jam them in there. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, but like when you, if you're cooking like collard greens or chard, sometimes you pull the leafy part off of the stem, and you can keep those stems, and you can use them, chop them up and make relish with them. It seems like a weird thing to do, but broccolis, jam them in there. Put that on the top. Right. Oh, I forgot about my garlic scapes. Just gonna put those in there. This part's kind of not as tough, so I might not have to peel all of that off. Stick that. Let's see, Emma says, many people started getting groceries delivered or picked up from the store during the pandemic. I wonder how not going physically into the store has impacted our habits. Ah, that's a really good question. These little bits at the top here. Maybe I'll put some carrots that are in longer coin shapes. Do little chunks. And I like to let me put some little chunks. All right. Put this little onion on the top. So I got all my veggies in there. I'm gonna save this for something good, I think. And I also thought about maybe putting some garlic in. I got this this garlic is starting to sprout, and honestly, it's not going to be as delicious as like fresh garlic, but it'll still taste better than dried garlic. But you can, if you wanted to, this garlic that's sprouting, go plant that couple of these into a little pot of soil, and you can grow your own garlic. So I'm going to put, for this, this is a like pint jar. I'm just gonna put like a teaspoon of salt. And I thought normally for my pickles, I like to put a lot of dill, but for this recipe, I thought about doing kind of like a, putting some seeds. I put oregano, I'm putting some cumin seeds, and some coriander and some chili flakes, because I felt like I want it to taste a little bit like this, like the pickles that you get at the taco truck. I don't know. Cumin and coriander, it sounded like it would be good. So I'm just gonna crush some seeds. So I put oregano, red chili flakes. You put whatever you want in this. I had another really sad looking fennel in my fridge that I thought I was going to put in here, but it didn't seem like it would go well with the broccoli. So, and then here's the key. So 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I do 1 part vinegar to 2 parts water. This is going in the fridge, so we're not canning this. So I'm just going to do 1, and I just measure with my finger. I just eyeball it. So, oops, I have some water back here. All the way to the top. If you're using a metal lid, you might want to cut a piece of wax paper or parchment. And just shake this and put this in the refrigerator. I'm going to label it. And with the date. And this is going to start tasting pretty good in like 3 or 4 days. It's going to taste really good in a week, and it's going to last for a really long time in the fridge. So even just this like jar of pickles, basically it's going to put a halt on these vegetables and turn them into something nice for later. Like that broccoli stem wasn't going to get used. Those carrots weren't going to last much longer. And so now I have something that I can enjoy later. The reason I put the parchment there is because if I had a metal lid, well, these lids tend to leak a little. They say that they're leak proof, but they're not. So I find that the parchment helps it keep it from leaking. Add just a little extra bumper there, but I'm gonna, let's see, move back to my desk here. If you have a metal lid, the acid from the vinegar is going to react with that metal. And so just keep putting a little bit of a barrier between like wax paper or parchment paper can help keep that lid from corroding. So I'm gonna keep this in the fridge. Yeah. Let's see. What's our conversation in the chat? Both of those make sense. If you are doing meal planning and you don't get a key ingredient, it could throw everything off. Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think it seems to me that it feels, yeah, thinking about, there's all these like thoughts about like food waste is a big thing, but also thinking about how we get our food and transportation, and if things are delivered is it more transportation than everybody going to the grocery? I mean, is it more transportation than everyone going to the grocery store on their own? I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about. Anyways, thank you all for having this conversation with me. How long will it last? The pickles will last a really long time. They're not going to get, they're not going to ever become like unsafe to eat. They won't really go bad, but the texture of the vegetables will start to deteriorate over time. Like I've noticed with pickled onions that like after about 3 months or so, the onions start to get like a little bit see-through, so they're not quite as crispy. But yeah, I feel like this is a really good tool to have, especially if you're a gardener. You know, if you're like grow a bunch of snap peas and all the snap peas are coming in and you're like, okay, I'm done eating snap peas. I don't want to eat any more snap peas. Like, you know, put up a bunch of them in a quart jar, pickle them, throw it in the back of the fridge. And then like, you know, 2 months later, like, oh, I forgot pickled snap peas. Like once later on, once the snap peas are done and you can go back to snap peas again, you're like, oh, I'm glad that I had those saved up a little bit. So it can be a nice way to rescue some stuff from the fridge that are going to be used, or kind of deal with a glut of something that might be coming out of your garden. Or sometimes people get like CSAs, which is like a share from a local farm, and every week you get like, you know, a box that has a bunch of stuff in it. And so sometimes you know, it can be kind of a trade-off, because like you end up with a bunch of things, like you get like a lot of greens and maybe you don't eat as much greens, and so you got to figure out ways to like either eat it or save it or try a new recipe. Anyways, it's definitely after 7 now, and so I should probably stop talking, but thank you all for being here with me. And the recipe, so you should all have access to that slideshow, and it seems like probably if there's going to be a follow-up email sent out with the recording, they can send out the slideshow link too, and explore some of those resources that are in the slideshow. Anything that's a blue hot link leads you to something cool. So there's lots of cool stuff out there. Thank you all.